What was the very first thing your mouth said this morning before your head was fully awake? That phrase that slips out when the bed reminds you someone is missing. You whisper it, staring at the ceiling, without even realizing. There are 5 specific phrases your lips repeat at every dawn without you ever choosing to. 5 exact words. They come out on their own the moment the first thought of the day is that loved one who is no longer at your side. Saint Teresa of Jesus left in writing what happens to your departed in the other world every time your mouth pronounces one of them. And your heart has been repeating them for years without knowing, morning after morning in silence. The strangest part is that no one taught you those phrases. They came out on their own the first morning without him, without her. And since then, your mouth repeats them as if they were already written inside you. The question you have been avoiding for years: who learned to speak for you the moment you open your eyes? Because someone did. The answer lies inside the writings of Saint Teresa of Jesus, with a name, a date, and the page where she left it written. It has to do with what those 5 phrases stir up in the soul of your loved one, and with the exact way to silence them forever, starting tomorrow morning, before your feet even touch the floor. Write in the comments the name of the person you remember every dawn, just the name. That counts as your first prayer of the day for their soul. What is coming next was kept for you, piece by piece. In 1566, shut away in a whitewashed cell, Saint Teresa of Jesus finished a chapter of The Way of Perfection that her sisters reread without daring to comment on it. She wrote something there that the Church took decades to explain, and that today explains your pain at every dawn. She called it the uncovered hour, the exact moment when the soul comes out of sleep and has not yet put on the defenses it wears during the rest of the day. That hour lasts only a little while, perhaps a minute, perhaps 2. The brain opens a path between darkness and light. The room still smells of night, and the body, out of habit, reaches for the other side of the bed. When the hand finds cold instead of the familiar warmth, that thing happens which still has no name. A blow that rises from the stomach to the throat, and the mouth speaks. It speaks on its own, before the mind gives permission. It speaks in a whisper, or a sob, or a single word that bounces off the ceiling. Saint Teresa of Jesus taught that this first word, coming from his soul still without armor, weighs far more before God than its weight in ounces would suggest. It weighs as much as the finger of the blind man touching the hand of Christ for the first time. It is a naked word. That is why all of heaven hears it, and that is also why your departed hears it. Here is what almost no Catholic remembers. In the doctrine of Purgatory, the souls in the process of purification receive specific suffrages from the living: masses, rosaries, alms, offerings. Those suffrages relieve their spiritual thirst and hasten their entry into heaven. Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote in The Way of Perfection that among all those suffrages, there is one that slips through before any other. The first word spoken upon waking and offered with love for the soul of a departed one. The first spiritual alms of the day. The one that reaches their soul before the sun has finished rising over your street. Can you imagine what happens when that first word is a complaint instead of a blessing? That is exactly what most believing people do every morning without knowing. They open their eyes. They remember the departed. And instead of offering that first breath of the day for their soul, they spend it on a reproach, on a lament, on a bitter question hurled at the ceiling. The first spiritual alms of the day is lost, and the soul of the departed, which was waiting for that daily relief like a pitcher of water, is left once again thirsty. The sisters of St. Joseph noticed St. Teresa of Jesus doing something strange at every dawn. Before getting up, before making the sign of the cross, she would speak 3 words, 3 specific words. She said them with her eyes closed, in a voice so low that only God could hear them. And then she rose. Those 3 words are written in a manuscript still preserved in Avila. You will see them before this video ends, and you will understand why, when they leave your lips tomorrow morning at waking, everything will change for that loved one. But first, you have to recognize the poison phrases, the ones your mouth has been repeating for years, the ones your sorrow planted like a prayer in reverse. 5 phrases that escape before you have time to think. 5 phrases that, according to Saint Teresa of Jesus, hold your loved one back on the path to heaven. 5 phrases you believe were born of love, and that in truth come from sorrow that was never transformed. Each one has a story. Each one has a human origin. And each one has a precise remedy dictated by the mystic of Avila to her daughters in the manuscripts of the Way of Perfection. The first of the 5 is the most common and the most dangerous, the one you spoke this very morning without realizing, the one you have been speaking non-stop since the day of the burial. The phrase that sounds innocent, that sounds like natural grief, that any neighbor would call healthy, and that in the spiritual order produces exactly the opposite of what your heart intends. That phrase begins with a word of 3 letters, a word that, spoken in love, opens heaven, but spoken in reproach, closes doors that take years to open again. Saint Teresa of Avila wrote it in red ink in one of the margins of her manuscript as a warning to the novices. She circled it and placed 2 words beside it. Careful here. The novices understood that the saint was marking a phrase she had heard too many times from the lips of widows, mothers, and daughters who kept vigil over their loved ones through the night. That phrase is still said the same way today, identical, 5 centuries later. In darkened rooms before the light comes through the window, while the hand reaches for the other side of the bed, for what is no longer there. And when it reaches the ears of God wrapped in reproach, something happens that not even the one who speaks it suspects. The soul of their loved one feels that reproach as an added weight, a weight piled onto its purification. A small weight, yes, but daily. Multiplied by every morning your mouth has been repeating it. Think how many dawns you have piled up since they left. 30, 100, 200, 1,000. Each one of those dawns, your first word of the day was a poisoned word. Each one of those dawns your loved one received, instead of the relief they were waiting for from you, a dry little blow to their process of purification. That February afternoon, when Saint Teresa of Jesus read this passage aloud in the parlor of Avila, several of the sisters wept. They wept for their mothers, for their fathers, for all the loved ones to whom for years they had been sending small stones instead of small flowers. And they learned something that afternoon. Recognizing the forbidden phrase is half the road to silencing it. You open your eyes. The room is dark. A sliver of light coming through the blinds draws a straight line across the floor. Your hand, still half asleep, reaches for the other side of the bed. And then the question rises up through your throat before you have time to close your lips. Why did you leave? That is the first forbidden phrase, the one Saint Teresa of Jesus marked in red ink in the margin of the manuscript. The one most Catholic women and men in the world speak every dawn, believing it is a prayer dressed up as a complaint. The one that comes out on its own, with the exact rhythm of a heartbeat. Why did you leave? Why did you leave me alone? Why did you go so soon? Why you? They are variations of the same question, and they all do the same thing in the invisible order where your loved one now lives. To understand why Saint Teresa of Avila marked this phrase as the most dangerous, you have to remember something Catholic doctrine teaches clearly, but that the pain of grief erases from memory. The departed did not choose to die on the day they died. No soul chooses the exact moment of its departure. That date is decided by God, according to an order only heaven fully understands. The soul of your departed reached the threshold, was called, and crossed over. And now it is where it is in its process of purification, waiting to reach the full vision of God. When you ask, "Why did you leave?" you are pulling them back to a moment they no longer possess. You are reminding them of something that was never in their hands. You are forcing them spiritually to feel again the helplessness they felt at the moment of passing, and that holds them back. In The Way of Perfection, Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote, in her own words, that the souls in purification are there out of love, not punishment, and that any complaint from the living that drags them backward delays their entry into the light. The complaint of the living acts like a hand pulling from below. The prayer of the living acts like a hand pushing upward. And the question, "Why did you leave?" is exactly that hand pulling from below, without you even knowing you are moving it. Picture your loved one for a moment on the other side. Picture them climbing a long staircase, step by step, toward the presence of God. Every Mass you offer for them lifts them one step. Every rosary, every alms in their name, every small sacrifice keeps pushing them upward. And every time your mouth, on waking, throws that unanswerable question at the ceiling, it drops them one full step. Because your question carries them back to the moment of passing, where they would rather not return. This does not mean your grief is a sin. Your grief is holy. Your grief is proof that you loved. Saint Teresa of Jesus never told her daughters to stop weeping for their dead. What she taught was something else. She taught them how to weep without reproaching. She taught them how to feel the emptiness without turning it into a question aimed at the departed. The Carmelite sisters learned something concrete. Every time that question rose to their lips at waking, they cut it off and replaced it with another phrase. A phrase of 5 words that Saint Teresa of Avila taught them as a precise remedy against this morning temptation. The phrase is this: "You took heaven with you." 5 words, the same every morning. At first you will feel as if you are lying when you say them, as if your mouth is saying something your heart cannot yet believe. That feeling will last 3 or 4 days. After that, something settles inside you in a way you cannot explain, and the phrase begins to sound like an ancient truth you carried within you without knowing. Spoken at dawn, this phrase does the opposite. It pushes the departed upward. It places them where they truly are right now in their destiny, gazing toward the light, and it turns your loss into a foretaste of the heaven the two of you will one day share. You took heaven with you. Try it tomorrow morning at waking. Before the other question beats you to it, before your hand reaches for the other side of the bed, the moment your brain registers the first awareness of the day, say those 5 words in a low voice. It can be a whisper, a movement of the lips with no sound, or a clear thought directed to the soul of your loved one. And you will notice something strange once a few days have gone by. The morning will stop beginning with a blow in the stomach. Your heart will keep aching, but with a cleaner, quieter pain. The pain itself will change in quality. What used to be an unanswerable question will begin to feel like a waiting that has direction. The widows who came to the Discalced Carmel in the 16th century after burying their husbands confirmed it in the Chronicles of Avila. After 3 weeks of speaking the remedy phrase at every dawn, the nightmares ceased. The mornings became bearable. And some sisters reported a new sensation upon waking, the sense that someone from the other side was keeping them company in silence, without reproach, simply present. But pay attention. Changing the first phrase is not enough on its own, because there is another phrase, even more harmful, that tends to come out minutes later. This second phrase does not come at the moment of waking exactly. It comes when you try to get up. When you set a foot on the floor and feel the full weight of the day waiting for you without him, without her. It is the phrase of surrender, the phrase that makes so many widows stay in bed all morning, the phrase that Saint Teresa of Jesus compared in one of the texts of The Way of Perfection to a stone tied around the neck of the departed soul. And before I reveal it to you, you need to know a bit more about how it is born, because understanding it is the only way to cut it off in time. Before, the two of you were a pair, the coffee pot set for two, the table set for two. The voice that said good morning from the other side of the hallway, expecting an automatic reply. Now the kitchen is silent, and when you push your body to get out of bed, your feet touch the cold floor, and a sound comes out of your chest on its own before you have even sat up. Sometimes it is a sigh, sometimes it is a word, sometimes it is the whole phrase, "I can't do this anymore without you." That is the second forbidden phrase that Saint Teresa of Jesus marked in the manuscript of the Way of Perfection. The phrase of morning surrender. The one that comes out when the body begs to stay in bed and the heart gives it permission because it cannot find a reason to get up. The phrase that many widows speak every morning for years without knowing that with those 6 words they are signing a sentence against the soul of the one they love. To understand why Saint Teresa of Avila compared this phrase to a stone tied around the neck of the departed, you have to look at what follows once it is spoken. What comes next? The chain of invisible consequences that begins the moment those words go out into the air of the room. When you say, "I can't do this anymore without you," at waking, your body believes you. Your body is an obedient student that repeats whatever your mouth orders. If your mouth says you cannot, your body decides to stay still. The morning gets lost between the sheets. The hour of Mass passes. The hour of the Rosary passes. The hour when you used to offer an Our Father for the soul of your departed, that hour passes too. And when you finally get up, it is already 1 in the afternoon and the whole day has been emptied of suffrages. That empty day is the stone. The stone tied around the neck of the soul that was waiting for your prayers of the day and received none. Saint Teresa of Jesus taught something almost no one remembers today. The souls in the process of purification received their suffrages day by day, not all at once. Every dawn is a new opportunity. Every morning is a pitcher that you can fill with prayer for them or leave empty. And when a pitcher is left empty, the soul of the departed feels that lack as thirst throughout the day, until the next dawn arrives and another opportunity opens. If that one is also left empty, the thirst piles up. Picture the courtyard of the convent in Avila with the clay pitchers lined up against the wall, waiting to be filled at first light. If a sister stayed in bed out of discouragement, the pitchers were still empty at sunrise, and the other sisters spent the day with no water to drink and none for the garden. That image of the empty pitcher was the way Saint Teresa of Jesus explained to her novices what the soul of the departed suffered when their family member surrendered upon waking. That is why the phrase, "I can't do this anymore without you," is more dangerous than it seems. Sounding innocent, sounding even pious, it does exactly the opposite of what the soul of your loved one needs. It takes away the rain of the whole day. It leaves them without water until the next sunrise. And if this is repeated for months, that soul can be left stranded in its purification for a length of time only God can measure. In her own words, Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote that the soul of the faithful Christian falls ill many times from causes that live within a surrendered will, where the body has little to do with it. What she meant was this: there is a sorrow that surrenders, and there is a sorrow that offers itself. The first puts the soul out, the second sets it on fire. When you tell yourself, "I can't do this anymore," you put out the flame. When you tell yourself something else, you light it. And the difference between putting out and lighting the flame of one morning can be worth, for the soul of your departed, entire weeks of purification. What then is the remedy phrase that Saint Teresa of Avila taught her daughters against this second morning temptation? 4 exact words, not one more. The phrase is this: today we walk together again. Spoken as you sit on the edge of the bed, before your feet touch the floor, this phrase does what the other one undoes. It restores the company. It places the departed at your side in the day that is beginning, as a spiritual companion who is still with you even though they are now beyond the visible plane. And when a person begins the day with this inner company, their morning changes from the very first minute. The kitchen stops weighing so much. The table stops hurting so much. The hallway, where the other's voice used to wait, becomes a place inhabited in a different way. Inhabited by a presence that stays with you through prayer. A novice from Avila named Maria de San Jose lost her mother in the middle of Lent in 1572. Saint Teresa of Jesus, seeing her broken, handed her this phrase, written on a folded piece of paper. She told her to speak it every dawn before leaving her cell. Maria obeyed. And according to the Chronicles of the Carmel, after 40 days of speaking that phrase, the novice had a deep sleep in which she saw her mother clothed in light, much closer than expected, with a smile she would remember to the end of her life. But there is still one question, the one that opens what comes next. If the first forbidden phrase speaks to the departed, and the second to the body of the living person, who does the third speak to? Why did Saint Teresa of Jesus mark it as the most serious of the five? The third phrase is aimed at a different recipient. It comes out of your lips aimed at the ceiling, at the air, at God Himself. And what it asks of God, without knowing it, is something God cannot grant without contradicting Himself. If you were good, you wouldn't have taken Him away. That is the third phrase, the most serious of the five, the one your mouth says while looking at the ceiling, with your eyes full of tears, while the alarm clock keeps ringing on the nightstand and you cannot bring yourself to reach out and turn it off. The phrase of the complaint, the phrase aimed at God Himself. It has many variations, and they all do the same damage. My God, why did you take him from me? If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this to me. So much praying, so much going to Mass, what for? What kind of good God allows these things? The range is wide, but the heart of all of them is the same, blaming God for a cruelty He does not possess. Saint Teresa of Jesus suffered this temptation in her own flesh, and she put it in writing. In the book of her life, in one of the chapters where she looks back over the years of her youth, the saint confesses with an honesty that surprises anyone reading it for the first time. She tells how, after the death of her mother, Doña Beatriz, which happened when she was barely 13 years old, rage rose up in her chest one winter morning, and her voice escaped toward heaven in the form of a bitter complaint. She was alone in the room. Pale January light from Avila came through the window, and out of her mouth came words that she would spend decades begging God to forget. In her own words, she wrote that the wounded soul lifts cries against heaven that are wept in blood for the rest of one's life. She called those cries the language of the naked soul, and warned that few sins weigh so heavily on a Christian heart as that first morning complaint aimed at the Lord. If Saint Teresa of Avila, who years later would become a doctor of the Church, fell into this as a child, what about the rest of us as widows, as broken mothers, as orphans from one day to the next? But understanding the phrase is seeing why it causes so much harm. Because when you say, "My God, why did you take him from me?" you are making two claims without realizing. You are claiming that your loved one belonged to you, and you are claiming that God did wrong in taking them. Both claims are false, and both of them wound the soul of the departed in a way most Catholics never imagine. Your loved one never belonged to you. They were lent. God created them and placed them in your life for a length of time only He measured. Perhaps for 40 years, or for 70, or barely a few weeks if it was a newborn daughter who left before learning to call you Mama. The time was decided by Him, not by you. And when the day appointed by Providence arrived, He called them back to His side. God did not take anything. God received what was His from the beginning. When your mouth at waking throws that complaint at the ceiling, it is demanding a property that never existed. It is calling God to account for a loan that has run its term. And that demand puts the soul of your departed in an uncomfortable position, because the soul, already on the other side, knows perfectly well that it belongs to God. And to hear the loved one on earth deny that belonging hurts more than you could imagine. Picture a daughter who has been raised with immense love by her adoptive parents. All her life they treated her as their own. And suddenly, now an adult, she declares publicly that those parents stole her from another family. That daughter is lying, of course. But more than that, she is wounding the ones who loved her most. The same thing happens when your mouth, at waking, accuses God of stealing your husband, your daughter, your mother. The soul of that loved one hears your accusation and feels ashamed for you. That is why Saint Teresa of Jesus left, in her writings in the book of her life, the remedy phrase that she herself began to speak each dawn after that crisis of youth. The phrase that accompanied her for the rest of her life, and that, according to her, gave her peace in the bereavements that came afterward. It is a single line, 7 words. Blessed be the owner who gave and took back. You recognize there, as you will notice, the ancient echo of the book of Job. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But Saint Teresa of Avila adapted it for her daughters, so that it would have the exact form of a phrase that could be spoken at waking without effort, without having to remember entire scriptural passages. 7 words. They give the departed back to their true owner. They acknowledge in a single line that you were never their possessor and that the borrowed time has run out. And in doing so, they free the soul of your loved one from the uncomfortable position of being claimed as stolen property. Spoken at dawn, this phrase produces 2 effects at once. In the soul of the departed, it restores peace because it no longer hears accusations. And in your own soul, a deep healing begins because the heart starts to accept the ancient truths that your mouth has at last spoken out loud. There are widows of the Carmel who spoke this phrase for years without missing a single dawn, and every one of them left something similar in their letters, that after the first year of speaking it, they stopped waking up in fear. They stopped feeling that silent quarrel with heaven, and they began to feel instead a new kind of company, the company of the owner who was caring for the beloved in another place, better than they ever could have cared for them here. But there is a 4th phrase, different from the ones before. It is said when there is no longer demand or reproach. It is said when the soul of the living person, exhausted from so many wakings without him, begins to ask for something else, something the Church has always classified as a serious spiritual wound, even though almost no one ever confesses it to a priest. Stop a moment before going on, because the 4th phrase is the most intimate of them all, and most likely you already know it by heart. You have spoken it in silence, staring at the ceiling when the sun was already coming through the blinds, and waking up weighed on you more than the relief of still being alive. It came out of your lips on the first anniversary without him. It came out on the first birthday without her. And it came out again this very week, perhaps yesterday, without you ordering it. I wish I hadn't woken up. Other versions, I wish God would take me too. I wish the day wouldn't dawn again. What's the point of being here alone? If I fell asleep and didn't open my eyes again, it would be better. The core of all of them is one and the same, the wish to cancel the day, the wish to cancel one's own life. Spoken softly, without drama, like someone sighing while looking out the window. Saint Teresa of Jesus taught her daughters to tell apart 2 kinds of pain that look the same on the surface and that deep in the soul are opposite things. One is holy pain, the other is pain that offends heaven. Holy pain weeps but accepts, misses but trusts, sighs and at the same time offers itself up. It knows the departed is in good hands. It also knows that the life of the living still has meaning even though the heart is bleeding. Holy pain is what the Carmelite sisters learned to carry in silence while they kept up their prayer and their daily work. The other pain is different. It asks for the day to be cancelled, for the soul to be erased from the book, for what God holds upright to be undone. And when that pain turns into a specific phrase spoken at waking, something happens that most Catholics have never thought about. Your loved one hears it, and it makes them sad. In The Way of Perfection, Saint Teresa of Avila wrote in her own words that the souls in purification, though they are in another order of reality, keep an invisible bond with their loved ones on earth. The trivial thoughts of the day go unnoticed by them, but they do hear, like a distant voice, those thoughts that touch the eternal destiny of the living. And among them all, the most painful for those souls is the wish for death from a loved one. When you say at waking, "I wish I hadn't woken up," that word crosses the veil and reaches the soul of your departed. And that soul thinks something terrible then. It thinks you want to die because of them. It thinks its death is destroying the person it loved most in the world. And even though it already knows, from the other side, that your life still has a purpose in God's plan, it suffers seeing you crying out for something that would go against that purpose. This multiplies its purification. Because the soul of the departed, seeing itself as the indirect cause of your wish to die, takes on a burden of spiritual responsibility that delays its entry into heaven. It is as if God was saying, "You will have to wait a little longer until the person you left on earth understands that your leaving must not take her along too." Saint Teresa of Jesus left this thought as a serious warning in one of the closing chapters of The Way of Perfection. And she added something few sisters dared to comment on afterward. She said that the wish for death spoken aloud at every dawn could prolong the purification of the departed by entire years. That alone should be enough to make you bite your lips tomorrow morning before speaking it. What is the remedy phrase the saint taught against this forced morning temptation? It is a short, simple phrase, almost childlike, but it does the exact opposite of the wish for death. The phrase is, "Thank you, Lord, for one more morning." 6 words of gratitude to the owner of the day. They acknowledge the gift of still breathing, and they redirect your mouth, your mind, and your heart the moment you open your eyes. And here is the key that makes this phrase so powerful. By speaking it, you automatically turn that morning into a useful day for your departed. Because if you give thanks for the day, you accept it. And if you accept it, you can offer it. And if you offer it, every hour of that day becomes a small suffrage for their soul. The 8 o'clock Mass, the mid-morning rosary, the Our Father said while you hang the laundry, the contained suffering when you sit down to eat alone and the chair across from you is empty. All of it, offered up, rises to the other side like the smoke of incense. What used to be a morning of defeat becomes a morning of service. And the soul of the departed, instead of bearing the weight of your wish to die, receives the steady relief of your offerings. The Sisters of the Convent of Toledo, founded by Saint Teresa of Jesus in 1569, wrote down a specific custom. When a novice arrived marked by a recent loss, the older sisters handed her a white cord and asked her to tie it around her wrist each dawn. Every time she felt the wish that she had not woken up, she was to touch the cord and speak the 6 words. The cord acted as a physical anchor for a mind still wounded by grief. There are still Spanish widows who keep this old custom alive. Today, instead of a cord, it can be a fabric bracelet or a small rosary. What matters is the physical gesture of touching something concrete at waking, while the mouth says the 6 words. The soul of the departed receives a double relief. from the phrase spoken, and from the hand that confirms it. But there is still a fifth phrase, one that is the most subtle of all, the one that pious widows speak, believing that with it they honor the departed. And that, according to Saint Teresa of Avila, is the phrase that keeps the most souls stranded in their purification, because it looks like love when in truth it is a prison. In the letters Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote to her daughters during the last year of her life, there is one word that appears with insistence, marked and underlined by the saint herself in some manuscripts. A word she used to point out the most subtle danger in Christian grief. The word is attachment. The fifth forbidden phrase is the phrase of attachment, the finest of the five, the most polite, the one that almost sounds like a virtue when it leaves the lips of a pious widow at waking. I'm still here alone, waiting for you. Other variations produce the same effect. I haven't been able to move on without you. Without you, I don't move forward, I promised you. My life stopped that day. Here I am, just as I was back then. There are widows who have been speaking one of these phrases each dawn for 20 years, convinced they are a form of faithfulness. Some Carmelite sisters heard these same words from older women who came to the parlor seeking consolation. And the answer of Saint Teresa of Avila, when they brought her phrases like these, was always the same. She would lower her voice, she would lean in a little closer, and she would say, "Daughter, what you call love is attachment." To understand why the fifth phrase is attachment and not faithfulness, you have to look at the problem from the side of the departed. Your loved one, in the process of purification, is walking toward God. Every step forward depends on two things: the suffrages you offer them and the spiritual freedom you grant them. This last one is what hardly anyone knows. When a person dies, the soul stays bound by love to the loved ones it left on earth. That bond is good and sacred, but there is a kind of bond that ties down instead of joining. When the living person stays frozen at the day of the burial, unable to change anything in their life because they believe that changing means betraying the memory of the departed, the soul of the departed feels that stagnation as a hand holding it back. That hand keeps it from moving fully toward God as long as you keep standing still, staring at the ground of the day you lost them. Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote in the book of her Foundations, in her own words, that no soul finds true rest while it senses that the person it loved most on earth has stayed nailed to the memory of its death. She said it in an even more concrete way. The soul of the departed, seeing its loved one living as if it was still the day of the burial, feels that it is being the cause of a wrong, and that grief adds time to its purification. That is why the fifth phrase is the cruelest, because it is the sweetest. When you say, "I'm still here alone, waiting for you," it looks as if you are declaring an enormous love. In truth, you are declaring that your life came to a stop. And in doing so, you are telling the soul of the departed that its death has serious consequences over you, lasting consequences, consequences it cannot mend from where it is. The phrase sounds like a love poem. The phrase acts like a chain. And here arises the question many widows ask themselves in silence. How am I supposed to move on without betraying their memory? How am I supposed to live fully when he can no longer live with me? Does moving forward mean forgetting? Saint Teresa of Avila left the exact answer in one of her letters to Doña Luisa de la Cerda, a noble widow who was sunk in this very dilemma. The saint wrote to her that the best way to honor a departed one is to keep moving forward with the life he would have wanted for you. She explained something more, with a word both firm and gentle. Living forward is caring for the departed. Standing still and looking back is holding them back. That is why the remedy for the fifth phrase is a declaration of movement. Today I take one more step, with you already in my heart. 11 words, spoken at dawn, even before getting out of bed. 11 words that do 3 things at the same time. They acknowledge that the departed is still loved, they declare that you are moving forward, and they free the soul from the burden of thinking it took your life away with it. You will notice something important. The phrase never mentions forgetting or leaving behind. It says something much finer. You are moving forward, and you move forward with the departed kept in your heart. They go with you. You go with them. But the rhythm of your days is set by God from now on, and never again by the shadow of memory. There are widows who have spoken this phrase for 6 months, every dawn, and at the end of that time have written things that surprise. One of them, in a letter addressed to her confessor at the Carmel of Seville, said with wonder, "Father, for 6 months I have been taking one more step every morning, and I notice that my husband no longer weighs on me the way he did before. I notice him lighter, content, closer to God, and closer to me at the same time." That is the exact effect this phrase produces on the soul of the departed. It frees them to rise, and by freeing them to rise, it brings them, paradoxically, closer to you. Because the closer they are to God, the closer they are also to those who love them from the earth. So much for the 5 forbidden phrases, the ones your mouth has been speaking for years without knowing. The 5 dark voices that escape at dawn and tangle themselves into the soul of the departed. But the most important part remains. The 3 specific words that Saint Teresa of Jesus spoke in her cell in Avila at every dawn with her eyes closed before making the sign of the cross. The ones that are written in a manuscript preserved intact. The ones that will cause, if you speak them tomorrow, the soul of your loved one to receive the most powerful suffrage a living person can offer in the first awareness of the day. What would you say tomorrow at waking if you knew that those first words could move the soul of your loved one a whole step closer to heaven? That is exactly what Saint Teresa of Jesus taught her daughters of the Discalced Carmel for years. What she herself practiced in her cell of whitewashed walls at every dawn with her eyes still closed. What appears written in a fragment of the manuscript of the Way of Perfection that is preserved intact in Avila, marked with a small cross in the margin. 3 words. Lift her today, Lord. If your departed one is a man, say it in the masculine. Lift him today, Lord. If a woman, in the feminine. The formula is always the same. A single specific petition aimed at God Himself in the first awareness of the morning, with the eyes closed, before the sign of the cross. 3 words, not one more, not one less. To understand why Saint Teresa of Avila chose precisely these 3 words, and why they were enough to sustain a powerful morning practice for her entire life, you have to look at what each word holds. Lift. The verb to lift carries a special weight in Carmelite mysticism. The saint used it hundreds of times in her writings to describe the movement of the soul toward God. To lift is to rise, to raise what lies low, to bring forth from the tomb as Christ did with Lazarus. When you ask God to lift the soul of your loved one, you are asking Him to raise it one more step on its ladder of purification that very same day, without waiting for the next Mass, without waiting for the next Rosary, by direct virtue of the love you bear and the faith you place in the one who can do all things. Today, the word that anchors the petition in the very day that is beginning. This day, right now. That concreteness gives it temporal force. You are asking God for a specific favor for a specific day. And since God answers petitions made in faith and humility, that petition does not stay floating. It lands, it is fulfilled. It has real effect on the soul of the departed during the hours that follow. Lord, the word that identifies who the petition is aimed at, the owner of life and of death, the only one who can move souls between the states of purification and union. 3 words that together form a complete prayer. A prayer that fits inside a single breath. A prayer you can say before the alarm clock has finished ringing. And there is something more. Something the novices of the Carmel learned in their first months of formation. The 3 words are spoken in an exact order. First the verb, then the time, then the name of the divine recipient. Lift, today, Lord. That order matters because it corresponds to the movement of the soul of the one asking. First, the specific desire wells up. Then it locates itself in the present moment. And finally, it gives itself over to the one who receives it. Saint Teresa of Jesus explained to her daughters that this inner sequence reproduces the most ancient pattern of prayer from the Old Testament, the one the prophets used when they interceded for their people before Yahweh. And she clarified something more. The strength of the 3 words does not depend on the volume or on the perfection of the pronunciation. It depends on the moment when they are spoken, and the moment is one only, the first awareness of the day before any other word has crossed your lips. This means something important for you. If tomorrow, on opening your eyes, you let several minutes go by thinking about work, the grocery list, the worries of the day, the 3 words lose part of their power. They lose the context where they are most effective. That is why Saint Teresa of Avila insisted that her daughters speak them before anything else, before the Our Father, the Hail Mary, even before the name of the departed if they were speaking it through tears. And here is the most powerful morning suffrage, according to the manuscript of the Way of Perfection. 3 words spoken at the exact moment, an act of 2 seconds that changes the spiritual day of your loved one, according to the words of the mystic of Avila. Why so powerful? Because in that first instant of the day, when the soul of the living person is still without armor, as I was telling you at the beginning, anything the mouth speaks carries a disproportionate spiritual weight. And if what it speaks is a specific petition, made in love, aimed at God and referring to the beloved departed, that petition rises to heaven faster than any other prayer of the day. The novices of the Carmel saw it day after day over the years. When a sister arrived at the refectory, the Mother Superior could tell from her face whether she had spoken the 3 words or forgotten them. The ones who had said them carried a clear serenity. The ones who had forgotten them walked with a weight on their shoulders that all the others recognized without knowing how to explain it. That visible difference convinced the sisters of something Saint Teresa of Jesus kept repeating. The 3 words of dawn change the soul of the departed and also the soul of the living person who speaks them. Begin tomorrow morning. Before the alarm, before even the first sip of coffee or the first glance at the phone. The moment your brain registers the first awareness, say the 3 words in a low voice with your eyes closed, directing them with clear intention toward the soul of your loved one and toward the owner who watches over them. Lift her today, Lord. But there is still one more matter, a matter that comes to mind right now while you listen to these words. You have not just lost your loved one. You have been waking up for months or years with the poisoned phrases. And all those past mornings weigh on your heart. The unavoidable question is this: what do I do with all the dawns that have already been spoken? How do I mend what my mouth has been pronouncing on my behalf for so long? Look at the window now. Picture how in a few hours, when the sky begins to grow light, the light will come through the same crack you have been staring at since the day they left. The light that on so many mornings has been the silent witness of your poisoned words. It is going to be, for the next 3 dawns, the witness of something different. Because Saint Teresa of Jesus dictated, in the Way of Perfection, a specific practice for the living who have been speaking the forbidden phrases for months or years without knowing. She called it the practice of morning reparation. The novices of the Carmel knew it as the 3 dawns. 3 mornings in a row. That is the term, with a specific concrete act in each one. 3 mornings that mend before the soul of the departed all the harm built up over years of poisoned wakings. Why 3 and not more? Saint Teresa of Avila explained to her daughters that the number 3 in the Catholic tradition has a special weight in reparation. 3 days Jonah was inside the belly of the fish before God returned him to his mission. 3 days Christ was in the tomb before the resurrection. And that is why the practices of morning reparation in the Carmel were always done in groups of 3 consecutive dawns, without skipping any or putting it off out of laziness or sorrow. The first dawn is the dawn of recognition. On waking before anything else, you sit up in bed. You sit with your legs still under the sheets facing the window, and you speak in a low voice, slowly, the 5 poisoned phrases you have been saying, one by one, without skipping any. Why did you leave? I can't do this anymore without you. If you were good, you wouldn't have taken him away. I wish I hadn't woken up. I'm still here alone, waiting for you. And after each one, you add one single phrase of recognition. Forgive me, Lord, for all the times I said this without knowing. You will cry during this first dawn. That is good. The tears of recognition are the cleanest tears a Christian soul can shed. The same ones Mary Magdalene shed over the feet of Christ. The ones Saint Teresa of Jesus called mending water in one of her writings. The second dawn is the dawn of change. On waking before anything else, you say the 3 words of Avila. Lift her today, Lord, or lift him today, Lord, as the case may be. And after speaking them, you pray a complete Our Father, slowly, offered specifically for the soul of your loved one, without hurry or distraction, as if it were the first Our Father of your life. The Our Father spoken at the second dawn of the reparation has a special property according to the Teresian manuscript. It reaches the soul of the departed, wrapped in the scent of the previous day's recognition. It is like holy water falling on soil that has already been turned over. It goes in deeper, it refreshes deeper down, and it begins to undo in the soul of the departed the exact sum of the harm built up by all the poisoned phrases you had been speaking for years. The third dawn is the dawn of consecration. On waking, you say the 3 words. Then you pray an Our Father and a Hail Mary, one after the other. And before getting out of bed, you offer the entire coming day for the soul of your loved one. The Mass you will attend, if you can go. The midday rosary. The small mortifications of work, the family burdens, even the physical discomforts if there are any. All offered as a single spiritual bundle handed over to the Lord at the first light of day. 3 dawns, 3 concrete acts, one after the other. And when you finish the 3rd dawn, according to the chronicles of the Discalced Carmel, something happens that widows, mothers, and children have confirmed in writing for centuries. Something changes in the body, something changes in the heart, and often, during the following night, a short and clear dream occurs. The beloved person appears, briefly, without speaking, with an expression of calm you had not seen on them since before their illness or their death. And that expression stays etched in your memory with the force of true things. You will wake up that 4th morning with a new peace, a peace you will feel even if the bed is still empty beside you. The older sisters of the Carmel used to tell the novices a specific story about this dream. They said that the first time the soul of the departed appears, it tends to show its hands joined as if in prayer, looking on in silence with the calm of someone who is already in another order of peace. The one who has the dream keeps the image for weeks, not daring to tell anyone except the confessor. It was one of the graces Saint Teresa of Jesus asked for her young daughters when they lost their mothers. After the 3 dawns of reparation, the morning practice gets simpler. The 3 words of Avila spoken at every dawn are enough. The 5 poisoned phrases no longer come out on their own. Your mouth, retrained over the 3 days of the reparation, has learned a new path. Keeping to it costs less and less effort until it becomes as automatic as the phrases that used to wound. But there is something more you have to know before putting the reparation into practice. Something Saint Teresa of Jesus left as a final warning. The reparation works only when it is done with inner truth, without theater, without trying to convince yourself that you are already fine. What matters is that in the 3 consecutive dawns, there is sincere humility, a real desire to change, and true love for the departed who benefits from your reparation. If those 3 things are present, the 3 mornings do what they promise. If they are absent, the practice turns into an empty ritual that does not reach your loved one. But the human heart knows whether it has those 3 things inside. And you know it right now, while you listen to these words, while you feel the weight of the past dawns and the longing to begin tomorrow morning the first dawn of the reparation. You made it this far, and that already says something about you. It says the love you feel for that person did not stop at the burial. It says you are still looking for a way to be useful to them from this side of the veil. It says your heart, even though it has been carrying the weight of empty dawns for months or years, still has the capacity to change what it speaks at waking. That is a lot. That is almost everything. Now you have 5 phrases to recognize when they show up in your mouth. You know that "why did you leave" pulls the departed downward instead of pushing them upward. You know that "I can't do this anymore without you" empties the pitcher of the day before it has even begun. You know that the complaint thrown at the ceiling accuses God of a theft that never happened, and that this accusation wounds the soul of your loved one in a way you never intended. You know that the wish not to have woken up adds years to the process of purification of the one you love most. And you know that the phrase that sounds like faithfulness, "I'm still here alone, waiting for you," is in truth the hand that holds them at the threshold. But now you also have the remedies, 5 new phrases for 5 old ones. And the 3 words of Avila that Saint Teresa of Jesus spoke with her eyes closed at every dawn, before making the sign of the cross, before any other prayer, in the most vulnerable and most powerful hour of the day. "Lift her today, Lord." Those 3 words are yours from now on. You already know them. You already know what each one holds. You already know why the order matters and why the moment matters more than the volume with which they are spoken. You already know that your mouth, in the first awareness of the morning, has the power to move your loved one a whole step closer to the presence of God. And if you have been speaking the poisoned phrases for some time now, you also have the reparation. 3 consecutive dawns. The first of recognition, the second of change, the third of consecration. 3 mornings that do not cancel the pain but transform it, that do not erase the past dawns but cover them with something new, something that reaches the soul of the departed like water falling on dry earth after months without rain. You learned all this here. You carry all this with you when you close this video. Think for a moment. How many people around the world are waking up right now with the poisoned phrases on their lips, with no one having told them that this has a name, without knowing that Saint Teresa of Jesus saw it 500 years ago and left the exact solution in writing, or that tomorrow morning they could start doing something different, something worth more for the soul of their departed than years of masses offered without changing the first breath of the day? You know it now. And that changes tomorrow for you and for the one you carry in your heart. And there is one more thing. One thing that Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote in the Way of Perfection, and that serves as the final point of everything you have just received. She wrote that the souls of Purgatory wait from the living for 2 things. The first is prayer. The second, often forgotten, is joy. Because when the living person lives shattered, the departed feels the weight of that destruction like a debt that cannot be paid from where they are. But when the living person lives with hope, when they rise every morning with the 3 words on their lips and take one more step forward with the departed kept in their heart, the soul of the departed receives that movement too as relief, as freshness, as a sign that the love that joined them here is still bearing fruit there. That is why the best thing you can do today for your loved one is to commit yourself, starting tomorrow morning, to the first of the 3 words of Avila. Before the light comes through the crack, before the hand reaches for the other side of the bed, before the mouth decides on its own what to say, you decide tomorrow, and that decision is worth for the soul of your departed more than any word in this world can measure. Now I want to ask you something before you go on. There are people who have been carrying the weight of these poisoned phrases for years, and who this afternoon, for the first time, have understood what they were speaking without knowing. If you are one of them, write in the comments the name of your loved one followed by these 3 words, I carry you with me. It is the first step of the reparation that begins before tomorrow arrives. It is your first declaration of change. And it is, at the same time, a prayer that rises to heaven the moment your fingers write it. Don't put it off. Write it now, while the heart is still burning with what you have just heard. Because there are moments when the soul is ready to change something, and that moment is fragile. It cools off if you leave it for tomorrow. The small action done right now has more strength than the great intention saved for later. If this video reached your heart, and you know that better than anyone, there is someone in your life who needs it too. A friend who has not been getting out of bed for months. A sister who says every dawn that she cannot do this anymore. A mother who has been waiting for years for the one who will not come back the same way they left. A father who, since burying his oldest son, cannot find a reason to open the blinds in the morning. Share this video with that person. The act of sharing it is also a suffrage. It also counts. It also rises. And subscribe if you have not done so yet. Because what you have just received here is part of a longer journey. A journey of teachings from Saint Teresa of Jesus that will not fit in a single video, that cannot be exhausted in a single afternoon. There is more, much more, and all of it is kept for you, waiting for the moment when you need it. Subscribing is the only way to be sure that the next video reaches you when it is published. Many people say they will come back and find the channel later. Few of them actually find it again. The subscription is the thread that keeps you connected to what is coming. Click the button, turn on the bell, and when the notification arrives, you will know there is something new waiting for you, something born from the same spring as what you have just heard. This channel exists for that, to carry the wisdom of the saints into the room where you wake up every morning, to keep you company in the most vulnerable hour of the day with the voice of someone who has already passed through the same pain and found the way to peace, so that your dawns will stop beginning with wounds and start beginning with offerings. What is on the screen right now, as this video ends, is the next step of the journey. Saint Teresa of Jesus has more things to tell you. Things about the love that does not die, about the souls that wait, about the words that heal and the ones that wound. The video you see on the screen was kept for this exact moment, for this second, while you still have an open heart and a kindled intention. Give the title you see on the screen the same trust you gave to this one. It is worth it. Because the one who seeks their loved ones through prayer always finds them. Always. The love that passes through heaven comes back more whole than when it left. And the dawns that begin with the 3 words of Avila have a quality of light that those beginning with the 5 poisoned phrases will never reach. Tomorrow, you have an opportunity, a small, concrete, 2-second opportunity. 3 words, eyes closed, the first awareness of the day, and the name of the one you love, held in the intention of your heart, handed over to the only one who can truly lift them up. That is all that is asked of you. That is all Saint Teresa of Jesus asked of her daughters at every dawn in the cell of whitewashed walls in Avila. That is all your loved one is waiting for from you tomorrow, when the crack of light is drawn once again across the floor of your room. And when that moment arrives, when the brain begins to wake and the first awareness of the day opens a path between darkness and light, remember this, that somewhere in this world, other women and other men who have heard these same words will be speaking the 3 words of Avila too at that very moment. That you are not alone in the dark room, that there is a silent community of souls who at every dawn lift up the same petition to the same heaven, and that the Lord hears them all one by one with the same attention with which he heard Saint Teresa of Jesus in her cell 500 years ago. The saints do not grow old. Their wisdom does not expire, and the words that the mystic of Avila left in writing for her daughters of the 16th century have today the same strength they had the first morning when she spoke them. That is the wonder of the Catholic tradition, that what was true for her is true for you, that what worked for her in that cell of whitewashed walls will work for you in your room this morning with the crack of light you already know and the name in your heart that you never forget. There is something sacred in the dawn that has not yet arrived. That dawn of tomorrow, which right now is held in time waiting for its turn, is a blank page. No poisoned phrase has touched it yet. It is clean, whole, ready to receive the 3 words of Avila as the first writing of the day, as the first offering, as the first act of concrete love toward the soul of the one you have carried in your heart since they died. Think about that page of tomorrow while you close this video. Keep it in mind before you fall asleep. And when the first light begins to come through the window, when your eyes are still closed and your mind is halfway between sleep and the day, let those 3 words be the first. Let the love you feel for the one who is no longer here find a new way to speak itself. Let your mouth learn tomorrow morning that the dawn can also be an offering. That page of tomorrow is yours. Saint Teresa of Jesus handed it to you this afternoon. Take care of it. May God keep the soul of the one you carry with you. May Saint Teresa of Jesus intercede for you in the darkest hour of dawn, in that uncovered hour she knew so well and that you know too, the hour when the soul comes out of sleep without armor and speaks the first thing. And may tomorrow, when you open your eyes, your mouth already know, before your mind orders it, what is the first thing it has to say. See you soon. May the Lord watch over you every morning that comes.